Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mike Grain. Pleasure to spend some time with you guys on shelf availability, focusing on algorithms and in-store actions. Just as a quick background, I've been in the retailer supplier industry for about 40 years, 25 years with Procter & Gamble, calling on Walmart from a technology point of view. I then left P&G and joined Walmart and led a lot of their RFID initiatives, their robotic initiatives, worked on a package that you guys may have heard about, but called Spark, which is now called Volt. And now I am left Walmart and now doing consulting for Walmart as they roll out other on-shelf availability projects. But I'm also giving back to the University of Arkansas. I don't know if you guys know, but the University of Arkansas, for the second time in a row, achieved the #1 Gartner rating as the #1 supply chain undergraduate program in the US, which is a great accomplishment. They're doing it primarily because of the great work that they're doing with JB Hunt, transportation, et cetera. My push has been, well, we are part of the Walton College, so I'd like to see retail supply chain and on-shelf availability be equally part of our focus. And so that's really why I'm sort of giving back to the University of Arkansas to do that. Okay, so a couple of quick items that I want to cover with you. Number one, this is really being provided by two organizations. One is an organization called Conversations with Retail, on Retail, sorry. And I want to have Matt Pfeiffer talk through that, and then I'll mention the University of Arkansas engagement. So Matt, tell us why you're giving of your time to help us understand Conversations on Retail.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Matt Pfeiffer. I'm the founder of Conversations on Retail. Been in the supplier community for a good number of years. Did a lot of exciting work in my early career with the founding of 8th and Walton, and really the formalizing and standardizing of new supplier onboarding and supplier education, and I've had a lot of fun with that. But the whole point of Conversations on Retail is to bring like-minded people from the industry together to have open conversations about things that are important to them. And so we're delighted that you're all here. Thank you, Mike, so much for hosting and for the panelists. And hopefully this will be a lively and interactive conversation.
Excellent. And so if the second part of this is the University of Arkansas, if you are attending this conference but are not part of the Supply Chain Management Research Center, we'd encourage you to do that. You can either contact me or Donnie Williams, who runs that center. It's a great opportunity for industry leaders who are like-minded. Most of them are Walmart focused, to be honest with you, revolving transportation, suppliers, and Walmart themselves involved in talking about kind of what's new and emerging. And these particular conversations we're having now are part of that. So if you want more information about the SCMRC, feel free to reach out to Donnie Williams or myself. One of the things we want to do here is just talk a little bit, give you a little bit of introductory background about exactly what we're talking about here before we talk about algorithms. The first thing, and we've repeated this a couple times, but I think it bears repeating because I think everybody has a little bit different understanding about what some of these things are. The first one is the in-stock. The way most retailers measure in-stock, including Walmart, is, do I have any in the building? So it's, does the on-hand that I have, which is what does the system say that I have, is that number greater than what I think I'm going to sell? If the answer to that is yes, I consider myself in stock. That doesn't have any indication of where the product is on the shelf. So the newer version of that measurement is called on-shelf availability. And what that means is the product available for customer purchase or for online picking in store by an associate or by some kind of a third party? So is the product I'm looking for, if somebody goes into the store, is it available for them to pick off the shelf? Is it readily available? Do they have to go to the back room to find it? If it's not on the shelf ready to pick, either for a customer that goes in or for an online picker to fulfill a grocery order or an online order, we consider that to be on shelf availability. No, it's not on shelf. Okay. All right. Couple of things that make that more difficult. And I know I covered this one last time, but I think it bears repeating. If most people look at this shelf, I'll pick on Matt for a second. Matt, if you go in and look at this shelf, this is Head and Shoulders shampoo and conditioner. Not them saying that you need Head and Shoulders, but let's just say the product is there. And you look at this 4-foot section in a Walmart store, would you consider this particular shelf, this 4-foot section on shelf is pretty good, not very good, or horrible?
Yeah, without digging into the details, from here, it looks pretty good.
Yep, pretty good. You see any obvious issues with this shelf?
I see one item out of stock.
And I think most people would quickly go, yeah, this shelf looks pretty good. On shelf availability is pretty good. They do have one out of stock, but for the most part, they're in good shape. When we talk about on shelf availability, what we talk about is, are all the products there that are supposed to be there, that the retailer and the CPG supplier agree that should be there? And when you peel back the onion on this, you see a lot more things. For example, anywhere you see these yellow boxes, we call these distribution voids in the supplier community. It's missing a label, therefore it's missing the product. So the first top row here, it's got product number 1, 2, 3, 4. It looks pretty good, but maybe that's supposed to be 1, 2, 3. There's supposed to be one there. This one that's circled is actually 5. So in between number 3 and number 5, there should be a label and there should be product. That means the label's missing and the product's missing. So you've got 3 more on-shelf availability issues because of that. Pricing. The price at the register and the price at the shelf are different. That disappoints and frustrates customers. That's an on-shelf availability issue. Downstocking. I've got product up here. Walmart typically does this. Some other retailers do as well. The product's up here, and on the top shelf, it says, ask an associate for assistance, but it's not down here where it should be. And then the last but not least, and this one's really sometimes really hard to see, is something the industry calls either incorrect items or plugged items. That means that label that's right on this green top shelf on the green one, there's a label there. The product that's above it is different. It's supposed to be one particular item and they've put something else in front of it. So while it looks like it's in good shape, it's not. It's an on-shelf availability issue. So now that I back up, you see a shelf that looks like it's in pretty good shape really has several issues associated with it. And until you get into the level of details, it's hard to figure that out. All right. So the question becomes, and I'm going to ask one more question, and then we're going to open it up for any questions. And I already see one in the chat, and we'll answer that in just a second. Okay. Well, how do you measure on-shelf availability? Because unfortunately, unlike things like sales, it's not quite as obvious. There's really 4 methods that I'm aware of, and there may be versions of this, but the first is going to be what we're going to be talking about today is algorithms. Okay. This is an algorithm an algorithmic program that basically brings in data and it shows patterns that are inconsistent with selling that what you expect. And this is Team Core's algorithmic approach, and we're going to spend a little bit more time talking about that here in a second. That's one way of doing it. So we'll get into the details of that. I'm not going to steal any of Jeff and Michael's talk, but that's one way that a lot of retailers measure on-shelf availability. The second way is by store audits. Store audits are, I send a third party in to take pictures of my product. Those pictures then get calculated, analyzed, usually using computer vision and different kinds of methodologies to say, do I have product in stock or not? Field Agent, Gig Walk, Trax, IRI, Nielsen, we've got services out there that can currently do that. We're going to spend some time talking about that in a later series. The third major one that we are seeing a lot of in the marketplace are shelf scanning robots. This is a robot that happens to be from Badger Technology. It's in a Woodman store. It goes up and down the aisles a couple times throughout the day, and basically is capturing in-store conditions very systemically every single day, and then providing that data back to both the retailer and in some cases the CPG company. And then the one we talked about last month is RFID, and RFID technology is radio frequency identification, used a lot in apparel, and Walmart has just announced they're going to general merchandise, such as electronics and sporting goods with that, and toys. That uses RFID technology to match up what you should have on the shelf versus what you do have on the shelf. The key is most retailers and CPG folks have to have a way of measuring on-shelf availability. It's critical to determining true customer availability. And we do have, and I'll just put those up here. Today, we're talking about algorithms. We already talked about RFID. Coming up in July, we're going to have a set of panelists talking about shelf scanning robots. I won't want to miss that. And then last but not least, on the 16th of September, we'll have a group talking about audits. Okay, so let me stop there and see if they have any questions. I do have one question in the chat from Mike Price. If the product cannot be self-selected by the shopper, is it deemed out of stock? For example, you can reach the product but it's at the back of the shelf. I think the answer that I would give you, Mike, is if it's for most people, they're not going to spend 10 minutes digging around a shelf to find it. So if it's not pretty obvious that the product is there, I would consider that to be out of stock or on shelf availability issue. If it's up on top stock and they can see it, but they're not tall enough, and nor does most retailers want them reaching on the top shelf for it, we consider that to be on shelf availability issue. Okay. Couple of other questions. Is it possible to get useful measurements of OSA now from in-store associates picking orders and encountering off-shelf conditions? Andrew, 100% yes. That is actually one of the ways that we will talk about with online grocery picking. If a online grocery picker does go to select an item and finds it, they typically scan that item and put it in the basket. That's considered on shelf. There are retailers that are taking advantage of the fact that those online shoppers, who are basically associates, go to the shelf, look for the product, can't find it, scan the actual shelf label and say, I can't find this product. It's a nil pick. And so there are coming up with ways of using online picking agencies to be able to deliver that data as well. Great question on your part. But predominantly for most of the retailer and supplier community, these are the big four that people are kind of looking into. All right, I'm going to turn it over to a couple of folks who I think will be subject matter experts. Again, we're going to dive into the algorithm portion of this really well. Let me just have them unmute real quick. And Jeff, do you want to go ahead and unmute and introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, great. Hi, my name's Jeff Sieper. I run development in North America for a company named TeamCore. We focus specifically on addressing the situations that Mike has just described. And Mike, is there anyone else you wanted to introduce?
Yep. Yeah, the second person I want to have introduced is Michael Whitfield from Retail Insights. You should be set up as a panelist. Michael, you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, sure, Mike. I'm Michael Whitfield. I'm on the analytics team that supports CPG at Retail Insights. And prior to that, I was at Nestle Waters and Walmart at their home office, working on analytics, logistics, and innovations.
Yeah. And for the audience, I'm basically providing two codes here if you guys want to scan those, and they will be in the documentation. I will be providing a soft copy of this deck following this presentation for you, so you don't have to take copious notes. But if you want to scan either one of these, these are these folks' LinkedIn profile. So if you want to reach out to them for any reason individually afterwards, feel free to do that. So I'm going to start off just kind of asking some basic questions, and we'll start, Jeff, with you. You've been in this space a long time. You've actually worked for retailers. You worked for a couple of other analytic companies. You're now at TeamCore. There's obviously a business driver to this idea of algorithms in retail. Kind of give us an idea. What is the business, or what are we trying to solve with some of these algorithm? What problem are we trying to solve?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the top line in terms of just the customer experience and making sure that the product is available at the shelf. Obviously, that's the main goal for what we're trying to solve for. I think the reason algorithms have gotten traction is because some of the other technologies that you had talked about, in terms of like, maybe it's image recognition or RFID, these solutions can tell you part of the story. They can't tell you all of it. And so if I, give you an example of that, is I can tell you with the algorithmic approach, what kind of sales you're seeing coming through the point of sale, but I can also tell you what product is in the store. I can oftentimes tell you whether or not it's on the shelf with high accuracy. I can also tell you if it's in transit. So whereas some technologies might be able to say, look, and honestly, and I want to be clear too, that those technologies, all of these, some are better for some categories than others. So I'm not saying that algorithmic is, the panacea for every possible situation that's out there. But what I will say is that if you've got like image recognition, you got robots, it's taking a look and it says, okay, you know what, that item's there or not, or the planogram's correct or it's not. It can't tell you, it has no visibility to anything that's in the supply chain. It can't tell you that there is product that is in transit. It will be in the store tomorrow and it will likely be on the shelf soon thereafter. So that hole that's on the shelf will be resolved relatively quickly. And so with the algorithmic approach, you're taking a lot of the data points, you're taking a broader view of the ecosystem. And therefore, when you're using that data, you can get a fuller view of what's going on and what the issues are, what the root causes are that are driving those issues. And then who owns fixing them? Is it supply chain? Is it replenishment? Is it retail execution? Who needs to take the next steps to fix the problem?
All right, great. So how does it work? That sounds intriguing, but I don't know what. Lots of things are algorithms. Right? Tell me exactly how does this work, and how does it actually deliver these alerts that you're talking about?
Sure. No, exactly. So in order for the algorithm to work, it's all predicated on the data available. Okay. And what we're talking about from a data standpoint was we're saying mainly sales data and inventory data. You need both of those to understand what is going on in again, that ecosystem I was describing earlier. And what we're talking about is item level data, okay, SKU level. And we're talking about getting that at by item, by store, by day level, okay. Some companies might be able to do a week lag or a 2-day lag or that, but the more than that, 1 or 2 day lag, and you're going to be losing some significant sales. And so what we do is we get the data from basically any data source, but most commonly we're getting it from the retailers. So if we're talking about Walmart, we're talking about Retail Link, possibly Illuminate down the road, but from Retail Link is we're getting that data on a daily basis. So as Walmart closes their day, midnight, 1 a.m., what have you, that data, then we pull down the information from there and we're processing that data. We're cleansing it, we're harmonizing it, we're putting it through our models, and the algorithms are telling us then what the issues are. And it will go through there's different models and there's different algorithms that will go through a step process to say, what do we think the root cause is? And is it something that there's no product in the store? Okay, great. That's issue number one. Okay, well, no, there's product in store, but you know what? You're in a low on hand situation. You got product now, but you know what? By Wednesday, you're going to be out of product, and so you've got this low on hand, and you're going to cost yourself sales down the road. Or is it a phantom inventory issue? Meaning, I think I've got 15 units in store. Turns out I've only got 5. And so, these algorithms, get smarter over time, and they're going to tell you what, again, the root cause is, because each of those 3 situations I just went through, there's different people that need to do different things based on each of those situations. So again, it starts with the data, it's getting pushed through on a daily basis, models running, alerts are generated, and then they go out to the appropriate parties for them to understand what actions need to be taken. And so, what you're seeing here, you're seeing something that would be driven out to, let's say, a retail execution team, and or it could be someone that is working for a manufacturer, or it could be someone like, working with Anderson, we're also on the call, working with a broker, for them to go in and understand what types of activities need to happen and where they need to happen, which stores, which products. And it's also evaluating the value of the actions taken, right? So I can take a look at the entire situation and I can say, my gosh, I've got 1,000 issues that I need to address. Well, not all of those issues are created equally. So what we'll do is we'll take and look at that and rank order where the biggest value is. So for example, if I were to take action 1, I might be able to generate X amount of restarted sales. I take action 2, I can generate more sales. So I might say, okay, you know what? We're going to, hold on action number 1. We're going to focus on action 2. The person takes that action. They capture the fact that they took the action. So they're using a mobile device. And it could be something that is, the broker has, we can, the information gets pushed into their existing, ecosystem, their mobile, their tablet, etc. They're seeing what actions they need to take. They take the action. They then indicate that they have taken the action, which does 2 things. It tells us, number 1, that the action was taken. So we can now start to track that to see what kind of restarted sales happen. But it also helps the algorithm get smarter. Because what it's telling us is if we say, look, we think here's the situation, and they say, and the rep is in the store, and they say, you know what, you're right, it was, you're correct. Algorithm, sees that information, says, okay, I got it right. Or, you know what, that wasn't the situation. I got it wrong. Now I got to, learn from that based on other data that's getting fed into the ecosystem.
Yeah.
So
I'm gonna interrupt a little bit just real quick, because I think Adam just asked a very interesting question. I'd be interested in both Jeff, your reaction, and Michael's from Retail Insights reaction to this. And again, not asking for anything confidential for sure. Just want to, or just to clarify that. But this forecast is not provided usually by the retailer. What you're saying is you get that data and you create a forecast. That's why you want 2 years of data. You're going to create a forecast and say, am I seeing the sales pattern I would have expected based upon 2 years of history? Adam's question is, are there projects in the works to solve for consumer behavior with these algorithms? For example, certain items move at a certain different rate with online shoppers versus in stores. So I think the bigger question is, how do you make sure your algorithm is fresh and consider all the factors in the marketplace? And let's let both of you guys answer that, because I think it's a pretty good question for both of you.
Yeah, I would say that in order to do this right, the old way of doing it was you might do it at a category level, and you might look at just those 2 years of data and try to, do a kind of a straight line. Then it got into more things around like, okay, well, seasonality. Okay, well, great. If I've got candy and it's going to behave differently during Easter or Halloween than it will during the rest of the year. Okay, great, fine. Again, but you're still kind of treating things as one size fits all. And so what you end up doing then is you create that baseline model, and then you're getting additional inputs, daily inputs from your environment that help make this smarter. So for example, I might have certain regional differences. I might have certain buyer behaviors. So for example, when product stock up started to happen during COVID, there were certain parts of the country where that happened more than others. Okay, so you could get that read immediately and say, okay, well, maybe Milwaukee behaved different than Chicago. They're not that far apart, but those behaviors were very different. Now, when you take those types of insights and you're getting that information, it's similar to e-com and online shopping. As long as the data is there, and again, like a retailer like Walmart does have has a pretty robust source of data for online. So when you have that data available, you can create insights, and you can then make sure that you're not treating everyone the same way, and then make the decisions based on what you're learning from that data. But it all starts with the data.
Michael, your reaction and your feedback, do you believe that those comments are correct? Because it certainly sounds like it.
Yes, I agree. I think in the analytics space right now, we have a lot of different factors that we can also tune and tweak our algorithms with, so that we can account for those different behaviors and patterns, especially in the online space with the changes that have been going on there with online shopping. But yes, I believe all those are correct.
And so if the retailer or the CPG had the ability to split out point of sale volume by purchase type, i.e. brick and mortar in the store versus online, you guys could factor that in and create and adjust your algorithm based upon that, correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. And
Okay.
also, what ends up happening too is you understand the interactivity between the online and the in-store universe. And so in some cases, you might say, look, and again, Walmart does have this data. So for example, buy online, pick up in store. Okay, so if I understand that that's happening, I can understand for store A versus B versus C, when those situations are happening. I might have that happening a lot more at one store than I am at another store. So with that, it ends up creating, in some cases, more holes on the shelf. So, okay, great. That means I'm going to have even more out of stock issues at the shelf with those, where I'm driving more e-com purchases online that are being picked up in store or picked up curbside, et cetera. So when you're looking at it holistically that way, then you're able to do more of your forecasting and your ordering and your distribution to where those issues are happening, right? So again, when the data is robust and as robust as Walmart's is, you can do a lot with it.
So step 4 in this, product availability on the shelf. You're using this algorithm, as I understand it, to say, based upon the algorithm, this is selling as expected. I'm calling that on the shelf. Oops, the one right next to it, the example here with the X, it's not selling the way I expected. So you do two things. Number one, you mark that as an on-shelf availability issue so you can track it. Number two, you send it to step 5, automatic task for the POS and office team. Do you get feedback about actions that they took and any resulting benefit of that? Or is it just you feed it to them and hope for the best?
Yeah, no, it's captured in a number of different ways. The most discreet would be if you're working with a field team, so people are going into the stores to take actions, you're telling them what you think the issue is. They're going to go in and they're going to go and verify whether or not that situation is true. And they're going to then go fix that action. And so on their device, their mobile, their tablet, et cetera, and it can be something that a broker owns, or we've got our own apps and that are all device agnostic. What the rep will do is they'll go in and they'll say, okay, I've got this situation. I've got a low on hand situation. Okay, great. Yep. I've confirmed that is the situation. I need to order more product because I'm going to be out of stock here, pretty soon. Great. Check that, say I confirmed the situation existed, and that also flags it back to us to say that action was taken. And then what we'll do is we'll start to track the performance of that particular action. So as such, if you were saying, okay, well, I had this low on hand situation and the lost sales attributed to that could be, let's say it's $100,000 a week. Okay, great, fine. Now I've taken that action. Now I start to see it's no longer $100,000 a week. Maybe it's $25,000 a week. Well, I recaptured $75,000 worth of sales. And we know that that's the case because that action was taken. And we can compare that to other situations where actions weren't taken, and you're going to continue to see that $100,000 situation continue to be out there. And so we'll be able to actually measure at an item level the incremental or the recaptured sales, the restarted sales that were generated by the activities. So then you can then tell either the retailer, the supplier, the broker can all look at that and go, because of my actions, I restarted. I got back $8 million in lost sales, or what would have been lost sales. Oh, and by the way, I can also measure that against the cost of doing that, not just from a third party cost like a team core, but also from the broker standpoint, where the broker is saying, I'm sending people in, on a continuity basis, maybe once every week or every 2 weeks, et cetera. And there's a cost to do that. But then be able to say, but the ROI of me using these smart tasks, these intelligent alerts, is making the return on investment even better. And so you're able to, again, measure the activities and be able to attribute the sales to those activities.
Okay, awesome. So Michael, I'm going to turn it over to you because I'm going to build on what Jeff's just started talking about. So algorithm delivers alerts that then get deployed to somebody, either a store associate or in this case, a third party like Anderson. And we'll get into Anderson's role here in just a minute. They get that alert, they review that alert, they try and fix that alert. What else? What are some of the measures? Jeff talked about incremental sales recovery. Tell us a little bit about that. And I do have that chart if you want to talk from that.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Mike. So yeah, we sometimes call it, it can be recaptured sales, recovered sales. There's a lot of, different terms that, we have clients that use different terms around the world, but, we typically use recovered sales because that is, that's the result of, either the merchandiser acting upon an availability issue. So that's that quantifiable impact that they have at retail. And so when working with CPG clients and retailer clients as well, using that on-shelf availability data, and if you know that there's an issue, if you don't take any type of corrective action, then you can't measure it. So that's one of the big pieces, is that the action from the availability data. And so once you do take that action, like it was mentioned, that you can measure that. You know what happened if you audit the store, if you have field agents that are checking out what's going on, you can find out what caused that, and then afterwards you can measure the sales that would have been lost as recovered.
So let's go through this real simple example. I know it's simple, but I like pictures like this because it helps me understand it. I got two items that are selling 12, 14, 11, 10, etc. And both of them went to zero. Your algorithm would go, our forecasted sales for day 5 would have been 12 or 11. And 2 days in a row, you sold absolutely zero. My on hand says I have 12 in the building. So what's the problem? What do your solutions do? How do you give that alert to like an Anderson? And what's all this fixed ghost inventory, print label, et cetera? What is that activity? And then what's recover sale? Explain this chart to me.
Sure. So once that issue arises and an alert is generated, it can be sent out to either, like you said, it could be a store associate, it could be a field agent that's working that particular store. Then they can go out and check to see where the issue is, and they can scan and see if the product is indeed out. They can check to see if maybe the inventory, like it says, fixed ghost inventory. So if the inventory is incorrect, they can change that on the on hands. They can print labels and stock, as you mentioned, and then also if there's inventory in the back room, they can pick it from there. Additionally, an alert can be generated and you find out that there is a supply chain issue, so it's something further up the chain that's impacting it. But then also you understand where that's coming from, so you can take all of these different actions, and then as you see on that green parts where the sales start back up, that's where we then would measure the recovered sales after the action has taken place.
Got it. So in this environment, I'm measuring my on-shelf availability. I'm giving alerts to field people rather than having them take a picture and do audits and do all that stuff. They're literally getting those alerts fairly real time as the data is available anyway. They're going in, they're finding these items that are a problem. I'm assuming in a Walmart environment, they're using the Volt tool to do fixing inventory or printing labels or down stocking or generating picks or whatever. And then what you guys do after they tell you, this is what I did, you actually measure, did the actual sales recover or was there a sales takeoff after that? And that's basically the way your two models work, both Jeff, yours and Michael's, right?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay, perfect. So any questions, and I'll open it up for any Q&A that people have got. Are there any questions around the algorithm, around the methodology, what you can measure, what you get out of it, et cetera, before we move into, okay, I've got these alerts. What do I do with those? Any questions about the algorithm approach per se? I do have one from Jeff, or from Mike Price. Jeff, have you considered partnering with specialist online data partners to refine the holistic approach? I'm assuming that's online picking versus brick and mortar picking.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I know our CEO has had some of those conversations, but I'd love, to talk to Mike. Maybe we can take it offline too to find out more about that. Appreciate that.
Yep. Awesome. So Wayland has a question. How do you account for non-inventory issues? For example, a shelf simply being in disarray. Inventory there is adequate quantities, but the shelf is not well organized. That sounds like an Anderson question, but if you guys want to take a shot at it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I would say, just generally speaking, is, the algorithms can be incredibly accurate in some cases and tell you exactly what's going on. And in some cases, it'll tell you that there's an issue, but it may not be able to tell you exactly what you just described. So what you would see is at that particular store, you're going to see an anomaly. A flag will go up. Things aren't performing the way they should be. The algorithm may end up telling you it thinks it's X and it's not that. It's actually just a disorganized shelf. And so, like I was saying before, we don't have eyes in the store to be able to tell you exactly that, but it would give the indication to a field team member that there is something going on in that store. So one of the things that's going to solve for is, okay, instead of me just going into store 1, first, 2, second, 3, third, it's saying, okay, I don't see any anomalies at store 1. So I don't even have to visit store 1. So, save that trip. Go to store 2 because there is this anomaly. And so it's because of the product being disarray. So you are still, even though you may not know the exact root cause, you're still identifying that there's an issue at that store and focusing efforts.
Perfect. Let's go ahead and segue over to, thank you guys very much. We're going to bring you back in a second with some open-ended questions. Ryan and Travis, both from Anderson. You guys both online?
Mike, I'm here. Ryan, I had to step away.
Hey, Mike. How's it
Oh, there
going?
he is.
Ryan's here too. All right, good. Same thing, Ryan, quick introduction. We see your lovely LinkedIn picture and your LinkedIn profile if people want to reach out to you, but who are you? And tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Mike. I'm Ryan Cochran. I am with Anderson Merchandisers. I've been with Anderson for a little north of 18. I've been in the retail space for about 19 years in total. Some of my experience are running stores. And then, of course, with Anderson, I've had a few different roles. My current role is I am our vice president over our Walmart account. So I support a relationship directly between Walmart and Anderson. And with that, I will throw it over to Travis.
Thanks, Ryan. So Travis Massengill, I've been with Anderson a little over 22 years. And yes, that is correct. I started right out after grade school. So thank you for noticing, everyone. And I started actually in the field. So I spent 14 years with our field services teams and really got the nuts and bolts of it all. Moved to our home office here in Plano, Texas in 2014. And then currently the director of our client services team and handle only the biggest clients and best clients out there in the market today.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Appreciate it, guys. So tell me about, all right, you just heard Jeff and you heard Michael talk about these wonderful alerts. Obviously, that's probably changed the way Anderson worked things in the store. Tell us about your role, because all of these great algorithms and alerting and reporting and dashboard don't do anything, don't move the needle unless somebody actually fixes the problem in store. So open-ended question to both of you. What does exactly a broker do when it comes to driving drive and OSA for either a retail or a CPG or both?
Really, and I'll step in here, Ryan. So the first part is, especially for the Anderson side of the business, is you got to have the people to do it. Certainly, you've seen the cool robotic capturers of on hands and what's going on in the store. At the end of the day, I've never seen a robot, at least at store level, stock shelves, actually fix a label. Maybe that we get to that one day, but ultimately we have the people to actually get into the stores and capture data, like actionable data back. And all the scenarios that we've been going over today are real scenarios. I think ultimately, when you start talking about algorithms and making it smarter, our field does that, and we do that by bucketing certain responses that we've learned. So we get smarter, we make the algorithm smarter, and really just our last question, kind of going back to that. You think of all the different scenarios that go into play with that out of stock, and we've done everything we can and it's still not there. Well, then you're like, okay, we're out. We're out. The system thinks we have it. The step further then is like, okay, we're out of stock completely. We think we have 5, but we actually have 0 in store. We've checked that top stock shelf. We've checked the back room. So then you get into another whole conversation with which our associates are well aware. You have to have that conversation with the team lead to say, hey, we need this item adjusted. We need it to show that it's got 0. So then that would set off then the correct information back to the suppliers to say, we actually have 0. So what causes that? Certainly it could be cause and effect from DCs, and that's a whole other type of level, especially since you think of the pandemic days and the different things that can happen at the DCs, getting the product to the DCs, and then that timing of the product to the stores and so on. But also theft. Theft does happen in stores quite frequently. And in fact, you could say it's actually gone up since the pandemic days. And there's some areas in states out there that have higher theft than others. So that plays a big part. So really to take it to the full step of where I'm going with this story is you can get that team lead to the point of saying, okay, yes, I will adjust that. Now in today's Walmart, that actual on-hand adjustment then goes all the way up the ladder to the market level to actually approve. Now that final step has to happen for that supplier to actually get the information back that is a true 0 on hand. So I'm just throwing an extra layer into why having field services teams are so important. You get those extra levels and benefits, and not just the bucketed responses that we see and can make the algorithm smarter, but it's definitely things like that as well that come into play.
And Mike, one thing to add on to what Travis was saying, I mean, I think, first and foremost, when we're talking about alerts, I mean, Travis hit the nail on the head when it comes to people, right? And just being able to deploy to alerts quickly, because the alerts are great. The alerts are, they're in the now, right? And so you have to be able to get into stores fast to act on that alert that way, so that stays active. And then a couple of things that Travis was hitting on with on-hand adjustments, and he mentioned talking to stores and things of that nature, right? It also comes down to a lot of the relationship at the store level, right? And so between the field organization that's out in stores and the store relationship, so that you can work to assist one another and get those on hands adjusted and things of that nature.
So why would a CPG company use a third party like Anderson versus just doing it themselves? What is the added value we get with using a third party like Anderson?
Yeah. Go ahead, Ron.
I was going to say, I think, speaking from an Anderson perspective, you get an extension of the store, right? And so that's one thing that we really pride ourselves on, is that great relationship at the store level, really to be a brand ambassador for you and for your brand, right? And so going in, representing that specific brand, talking through maybe some of the challenges, the opportunities of what is being seen in that specific market from a sales perspective, and just having that candid conversations with the store, so that it can they can help overcome whatever objections you may have. And then I think another big important piece too is data, right? And so it's having live actionable data. And so when a CPG supplier uses a brand such as Anderson to go in the stores on their behalf to drive execution, we're able to provide data down by item by store. And so now you have actionable data to tie in with your retail link data, as well as the algorithms that we've learned about on the front side.
Awesome. Let me invite Michael and Jeff back on the line. I'm going to open it up for anybody who has any questions. And if you've got any questions, go ahead and open it up in the chat. I'm going to ask all 4 of you a little bit of question, which probably sounds like a trick question, but I don't mean it to be, because I think there's a good answer. If we pay for an algorithm-based approach and we pay for resources like Anderson to go in to do the work, aren't we really doing the retailer's job for them? Why would we do that? Why would we invest in that? Jeff's laughing because this was not on your pre-note questions, but I'm sure it's going through people's minds, right? That's really the retailer's job. Why am I investing in all of these solutions, both algorithmic solutions and basically Anderson coverage to do the work that the retailers are supposed to do? So while people are putting their other questions in the chat, I'd like to hear from you guys what your reaction is to that.
Well, I guess maybe I'll go first here. In some cases, the retailers are taking on that responsibility. So I'll give you an example. Ahold. Yeah, Ahold has gone to market by saying, look, it is our responsibility. We are going to hire more people, and we're going to use an algorithmic approach to do this. Now, what they do, and as we've always seen, is that's not a cost that they're going to just sit there and eat. They have passed that along to the suppliers to say, look, to participate in this program, we're going to identify these issues and we're going to fix them on your behalf. Okay. But in order to do that, you got to pay into it. So in some cases, there are those situations. So there is that. Now, to say that over and above that, isn't this something they should be fixing on their own anyways, outside of that kind of a formal program that gets charged out? Yeah, absolutely. But I think there would always be aren't there these things that retailers should be doing across the board? And I think you're always going to hear this. This is a partnership between the organizations. We both have to do this. And, in some cases, there are discussions where they say, look, we understand that we have an on-shelf availability issue and we're going to shift some funding from A to B because we, meaning supplier and retailer, are going to benefit from this. So when you've got the data to support that, the shifting of funds and moving it from maybe a little bit of trade spend decrease, but putting it into retail execution to say, we're going to fix this issue and it's going to drive our top and bottom lines, then you've got some more collaboration going on there. So it'll never be a retailer doing it only on their own and on their own dollar. I think you're going to see more of that partnership type discussion.
Great.
Yeah, and to jump in with what, oh, sorry about that, Mike, and just to add into where Jeff was going, in that regard, the whole partnership thing, right? So it is a partnership between the supplier and the retailer, and that's just really any retailer in general. As we all know, we're all in retail. We understand that the roles and expectations that the store associates have, right? There's a lot of different daily rhythms that they have to go through, and so sometimes there is a need to have additional help and assistance for one-off task, right? And that's where companies like ours definitely comes into play, to be able to support that. So really, I mean, just all in a partnership. And then, as we all are aware, there, from a labor perspective, just across the nation, right now with everything that's going on, in the U.S. specifically, having additional labor programs such as a third-party labor company, just helps push labor and hours and time into stores, and it's more customizable time specifically to the CPG's needs.
Yep. All right, great. Michael, any perspective before we move on to the next question?
I think Jeff and Ryan covered that pretty great. So,
yeah, I would argue it's the retailer's responsibility, but B, at the end of the day, a customer who is looking for an item of yours in a store who gets disappointed has lots of options. They are a click away from bringing their phone out and ordering it on Amazon. In that case, the retailer loses. That's the reality. And so it's in your best interest to drive or the other piece is that brand is not there. I'm going to switch to another brand and you potentially lose a customer. Retailers have the same labor problems that everybody else does. It's a huge issue. They have to stock the shelves. They have to reset the modulars. They have to do all the pricing. They have to answer all the customers' questions. That they've got 10,000 things to do. They've got inventories they have to do. They got all these things to do. It is in your best interest to help identify those alerts and use a third party. Because, for example, if a label gets removed from a product, somebody will plug it with something else. The Night Stalkers will come to stock. They'll open up the box and goes, oh, it looks like they got some, and it'll go back on the shelf in the back and it won't ever be stocked. Travis can, with Jeff and Michael's tools, it can alert them that there's a problem. Travis can go, oh, the label's missing. Let me use my Volt application to put the label back. restock it. Now the replenishment system works. So they're not stocking. We're not hiring Anderson to stock product. We're helping them to identify major opportunities in a big box retailer like Walmart to that will limit on-shelf availability from happening. So we have an anonymous question. With unemployment at 2.2% in Central Florida, one could argue that Walmart needs all the help they can get since it's so hard to find help. How about that? Now, Jeff, you're probably the farthest away from Florida, but true statement, correct?
No, absolutely, and I would say that that is not isolated to just that region. I mean, you're seeing everything out there, and it's one of the things that, I mean, we may be all at the right place at the right time. I mean, and what I mean that by that is like us, Retail Insights, and that too, because as companies like Walmart, like Anderson, are out there trying to, saying, look, either I got people out sick with COVID, or, I got inflation's going on, I got price increases, I got cost issues in my supply chain, I got to do more with less. Our whole value proposition is to say, look, get more efficient with what you're doing. So take the existing resources and deploy them as efficiently as possible to get the best ROI on it. So whether or not you're able to use, put more people in the field, that may not be it. You may be working at 75% capacity, but how do you take that 75% and get more efficient with that, to do more using the data to tell you where to go and what to do?
Yep. So the last question I've got here is actually from Mike Price. Jeff, he's probably giving you a tough time with this question, but I think it's a fair question to ask. It's one we talk about all the time. Travis, I know we talk about all this time. This algorithm loves data, Michael, and a lot of data, right? So an item that's selling, like the example we use, 15, 17, 18 a day, and suddenly it goes to zero, it works pretty well. What happens when you have a low velocity item? Is there a methodology that allows your algorithm to work, or should suppliers think about other alternatives like store audits to be able to supplement these alerts?
Yeah, for lower velocity items, like you mentioned, the fast moving items are pretty easy to be able to detect any issues and changes in their sales patterns. But the slower ones, there is certain business intelligence that we can use to tune our algorithms accordingly to kind of detect those. They may not be as accurate, because if an item is only selling a couple times a month, you may not be able to alert on that as quickly. But I think kind of a mixture of using the algorithmic approach with some of those in-store actions and pairing those together, you're able to catch those. And we've seen examples of that all the time. So
yep. Yeah. The only other thing I'll tell you is, from a supplier point of view, if Anderson is getting an alert from a Team Core or from a Retail Insights, and they go to the shelf to look to see if it's really a problem, the first Travis thing they do is they say it's a problem or it's not a problem. So both Retail Insights and Team Core get feedback back. I just delivered you an alert. Anderson went to the shelf. There was no problem there. It was perfectly in stock and it was beautifully spaced and all that kind of stuff. That feedback goes back to make the algorithm even smarter. And so part of, you got to be careful with that, because part of that is the timing from when the alert gets generated until the alert actually happens in the store is a factor. We could have generated the alert at midnight and sent it to Travis's team by 7 o'clock in the morning. And in the meantime, Walmart could have stocked it. So we got to be careful to not punish the algorithm people, but there is accountability and measurements in place everywhere. You get to measure on-shelf availability, you get to measure alerts, you get to measure whether they're valid, and if it gets fixed, you get to measure whether recovered sales happen. This is an investment that I think CPG suppliers need to play with their major retailers, probably not all the retailers, but the ones that they have a collaborative relationship. I believe it's extremely valuable and important to drive that on-shelf availability that the industry needs. Last question, and then we're going to wrap it up. I'll put this one to Anderson. Is alert-based coverage at Anderson priced differently than surge or routine coverage?
Yeah, I'll take that one, Travis. From a pricing perspective, I mean, it's really hard to it's a hard question to answer. Really in this platform, because we would need to understand a lot of details, right? Store counts, unit counts, item counts, number of touches, etc. And the alerts, right, obviously drive that, and so that would help us answer that. Typically, what I would tell you is anything that would be alert based, your return on investment is going for those alerts. As Jeff was talking about, you may have one store that's visited multiple times per week, and maybe some stores that aren't visited, because of what the algorithms are telling essentially the labor teams. So here's what I would tell you: your dollars are going into an ROI bucket, right? Because the visits are targeted to what the needs of that algorithm are. So to be able to fully price it and kind of tell you pricing and differences, we would just need to understand a lot more details. We could get that over quickly.
All right. Well, we're right at 1 o'clock. Thank you very much for all the attendees. A couple of next steps. Next step is I will send you a soft copy of the deck that we've just provided. So you have that that'll include the LinkedIn profiles of all these people. Number two, you see the dates on here. We've got upcoming algorithmic or shelf scanning robots, fixed cameras, and in-store capturing with crowdsourcing. Those are other methodologies that you can use, and certainly that should be focused on. So thank you very much, Jeff, Michael, Travis, Ryan. I know you got a busy day. I know it's Friday. I just want to thank you and Matt Pfeiffer very, very much for hosting this. Very, very insightful, very, very helpful. And I'm assuming that you have no issue if people reach out to you via LinkedIn if they've got follow-up questions, correct?
That'd be fantastic. Thank
Please
you.
do.
Thanks for the opportunity.